All right, good morning. Thank you everyone for coming out. My name is Larkin Nguyen. I am a cybersecurity account executive for DARKTRACE. Our headquarters are up in San Francisco. I'm going to be giving a live walkthrough of our user interface so you can see what it's like to use our tool for proper security investigation and touch a bit upon our cloud deployments as well. Give a key reason why we're here is that we have really expanded into the cloud in the last year or so, winning numerous Forbes Cloud 100 awards and things of that nature. So ready to have this interaction. And afterward, I encourage you to stop by over by our booth. We are right over here. There's a big screen going on that has the same demo going up. My colleague Joshua is over there, standing out there. He's one of the only guys in a suit. You'll be able to identify him pretty easily. So to get started, what you're seeing right now is the DARKTRACE Threat Visualizer user interface. This is the same template that we use for all of our customers around the world. We have over, at this point, nearly 10,000 deployments across the globe, and right now it's currently populated with one of our, the data from one of our multinational customers allowed us to take their information and show it for proper threat investigations. To give a bit of background on DARKTRACE overall, our core technology is called the Enterprise Immune System, so that is what you're going to be visualizing here. We take this different approach to cybersecurity, so rather than sitting at the perimeter and using a knowledge of past attacks, threat feeds, threat intelligence, rules and signatures of known malwares and different kinds of attacks to predict what might come onto the network, we take this approach of let's learn a network from the inside out, no matter how it's deployed, no matter what configuration it has, be it on-prem, in the cloud, even in SCADA industrial environments. We cover everything possible. And we take this approach by leveraging unsupervised machine learning and AI algorithms. This way that we are able to deploy, whenever we deploy, it is baselining unique to whatever network we're plugged into. So it allows us to catch these really subtle insider threat behaviors, IoT vulnerabilities, the 0 days that get past your firewall, even just the slow and low malwares that somehow got in via phishing. Of course, these perimeter tools are very useful, but having this kind of layered approach and this overall network visibility is absolutely key. So what we can see here is a just heat map of your entire network. What we're identifying here is not any necessarily known bad, we're just identifying what's unusual behavior. The AI itself actually gives scores according to whatever alerts are going to be coming up on your network, based on the metrics that are flagged and based off an understanding of what normal looks like for every user and every device overall. So what you see here across the globe are the various locations where DARKTRACE is deployed. And you can see the various subnets that exist. This heat map is meant to be very intuitive, so you can see exactly what's going on your network from a very high level, even if your network is spread out across multiple countries around the world. So every subnet will be color-coded according to how many of these unusual alerts show up. So where you see the more warm colors, the yellows and oranges and reds, is where the unusual behavior is going to lie. Whereas where you see the blue colors, that's going to be where the more normal and benign behavior is happening. You don't have to worry as much about the users and devices that are happening there. Up here at the top is an Omni Search function for your network. Basically, it's an ability that you can take any thing that you want and look into it and see what might be happening on the network. So a key example of this is you can search by IP address, search into subnets, even search by different kinds of behaviors. So maybe as you're making your cloud migrations, as you're maybe changing up your cloud storage policies, you want to be observational of who's doing what. Actually, I heard a story from one of my colleagues about a customer of theirs who we deployed during a merger and acquisition, and they had to make sure that they understood what their new companies were going to be doing, what cloud storage policies they were going to be enacting. So one of the company might allow Dropbox, one company might allow Box, and you just want to have an observation as to what's going on. So you can even look up within the Omni Search function and see any instances of unusual Dropbox behavior. So you can just understand what data is being transferred where, which users are interacting with it, and just make sure that you have a real understanding of what's happening across your network. The key value add here is just knowing what your network looks like so you can properly defend it. And so then over here on this left-hand side, this is the DVR functionality for your network. I'm going to get into this when I show you what is going on with a threat investigation. But the idea behind this is that you can actually not just get this overall visualization of what is happening across your network and what kind of behaviors are originating where, but you can actually play them back as if they're happening in real time. It makes it for a very easy threat investigation because you don't have to manually sift through logs and try to figure out what's happening. You get to see how the AI is commenting on the different behaviors happening on the network. So With that, I'll actually get into a threat investigation, show you a bit more about what DARKTRACE is capable of finding. Down here, this is our threat tray. So same kind of color coding as you would see up in the map view as well. So more red is going to be more anomalous on a scale of 0 to 100% anomaly, and more yellow is going to be lower on that scale. If, say, this is currently viewed by models of normal behavior according to the highest score. So you're going to see the most unusual behavior here and the least unusual behavior down here. Though you can filter according to all different kinds of metrics. So if you want to see most recent breaches, if you want to leave comments for your security team to discuss that way, you can sort by most commented, or even see which devices have been behaving in the most unusual way most frequently. And that's a way that you can sort of pick and choose what you do. But we tended to keep it here in the highest score zone just because it does help to prioritize what you want to look at on your network. So if I were to click on this, this investigation right here, you can hover over and see exactly what is originated and the timestamp associated with this particular unusual behavior activity. Again, if this really is DARKTRACE making a judgment call. It's not saying that we know for certain that that this is a known bad attack, known change. What we like to say about DARKTRACE's approach is kind of just speaking overall to how cyber threats emerge. Not every change on a network is going to be indicative of a threat necessarily. It may just be a change on the network, but every threat is going to show some change on a network. And we want to catch the threats when they're in their just minor change moments rather than you have to do damage control down the line. It makes for your security team to be much more efficient and effective at what they are doing. So you can see here, we're able to pull the hostname, IP address, MAC address, subnet, vendor, all this information about the device in question that committed the unusual behavior. In this case, the unusual behavior is focused around the metric of unusual data transfer. So something where potential IP might be moving offsite, so it would be flagged significantly higher. If we click on this magnifying glass, this is where you can actually pull into action the DVR functionality of the network, because you can get a visualization of the device in question around the time of the alert. Let me pause it so it doesn't run away ahead of me. But what you can do here is you can see, here's the same device that we hovered over before. And you can see all the different devices and servers, et cetera, that it was connecting to around a 1 minute window around the time of the unusual behavior. The key functionality for this is just, one, it looks kind of cool. You're able to get this interesting visualization of what's happening on your network. But what you can do simultaneously is, let me move this over here. I can click on this little event log button, and you can actually see all the different metadata level connections that were happening around the time of this incident. So you can see not just the unusual behavior, but also all the normal behavior at the same time, and be able to understand what is the context that DARKTRACE identified to flag the certain different metrics that created this alert in the first place. So if you press play, you can visualize and sort of see all the connections happening and see what DARKTRACE notices at the same time. So the moment that there is a change in the timestamp, you're going to see what happens. It's as real time as possible. And in cybersecurity, being real time is about as close to proactive as you possibly can be and predictive as you possibly can be. So when you look here, in this case, and you're able to see that there's a slew of SMB reads all happening in the span of a few seconds. Certainly doesn't look like something that a human would be necessarily capable of. But then as it continues on, let me pause again. You're able to see how DARKTRACE is able, the AI is able to make judgment calls on the fly. So it's not going to overload you with unnecessary multiple, duplications of different alerts. It really will consolidate it all down into one, because it tells a very interesting story about the threats that are present on your network. So what you can see here is that after all the SMB reads, the unusual activity was flagged at 24% out of 100 due to the metric of internal data transfer. So that certainly is something to create an alert, but it's not necessarily enough to be flagged in a very high category. But then you can see, even just in the immediate seconds following, that there are some attempted connections to things like Tor project, which already in and of itself can be a little bit indicative of maybe not so compliant business behavior. And you can see that the new metric of external connections to closed ports comes in, and subsequently the unusual activity goes up as well. Even still, not that much, only at 31%, but the moment that there's a DARKTRACE detecting that there's an attempt at external data transfer, taking all this information that this user and device just accessed and moving it offsite, you can see that the unusual activity spikes up to 77%, really puts it in the red zone instead of in the yellow to orange zone. And in this case, this actually gets me to another aspect of DARKTRACE's functionality. The enterprise immune system is this alerting tool, and it allows you to investigate everything. We also have an ability to actually take action on some of these very unusual behaviors, and this would be one of them. Antigena, think an immune system. Your immune system has antigens that respond to viruses. Antigena responds to computer viruses and whatever else is on your network. Antigena takes surgical responses based on the metrics that are flagged for certain unusual behaviors. So in this case, because the metric was external data transfer, the subsequent Antigena response was to block the outgoing traffic for 3 hours. So it's just like cutting off the source of the unusual behavior and the potential cyber threat on the network. If it would be something different, maybe a beaconing behavior, then the Antigena response would be to target the specific ports to that specific endpoint and really get right down to exactly the connections that are originating with this unusual behavior. Not meant to take an entire device offline and render an employee completely unable to do their work, but it certainly is something that allows you, basically it buys your security team enough time to adequately respond to something that might be happening. As you can see, just in the span of less than 30 seconds, it's able to make this judgment call, and that's how fast the attempt at moving the data off-site was. But Antigena came in, is able to neutralize those connections, and just gives you, and you'll be able to receive an alert. Your security team will be able to respond accordingly and not worry about having to, run and chase ahead and try to figure out what happened. But in this case, you know what happened and you know it's been quarantined, so you just go right to the source and cut it right there before it spreads across your network. A couple other things I wanted to highlight within this tool and within its functionality is, that no matter where your network is deployed, be it on-premise, in the cloud, Antigena is able to work. So that's a very exciting thing that DARKTRACE announced within the last few months, is that our Antigena response used to be focused on the on-premise networks, but now we've been able to extend our autonomous response into cloud and SaaS applications. So we have direct connections and partnerships with Dropbox, Salesforce, AWS, Azure. So you can get more of our information from our booth that's right over there, a little bit past LogRocket. And you'll be able to get some more information about exactly how that is deployed and the different other partnerships that we work with in cloud and virtualized environments. But that is a really key thing. We don't just extend that visibility into those networks. We also are able to take action at the same time. It's something that is very unique on the market. To this day, there still is nothing that is quite like Antigena on the market in terms of what it's able to do, not just in on-premise environments, but also across the board and into your cloud environments as well. So a couple of other things I wanted to highlight as well about different views of this. One thing you can do as well, this is one approach to how you can walk through a security incident and how your team can be viewing it. Sometimes you may not have time to necessarily observe everything, and you're going to want to instead focus your time on your other tools and maybe just have a dashboard pulled up instead. So we have a dashboard view that you can view it for instead. This is, we lovingly also call it the SOC view, because a lot of our customers will project this up onto a screen within their SOC team, and they're able to see all the same information that you saw in the threat visualizer main user interface. So the alerts you saw at the bottom are now going to be over here on the left-hand side, and automatically refreshes. You don't have to touch it if you don't want to, but you're able to sort of catch out of the corner of your eye if there is something that shows up that you want to observe. So here's the same alert that I just walked you guys through. You're able to immediately click in and see, here are the connections details. You can click in to see the event history as well, just see some of the relevant connections, as well as how often maybe there were unusual activity events associated with this. So in this case, it really was extremely rare and extremely urgent because there had been no other major flags associated with this device. And the other beauty of this, too, is that you can have this pulled up, but if you want to go right back into the investigate mode where we did before, it's just one click away. So it makes it as simple and intuitive as possible for you to utilize. The best thing that I've been able to hear from DARKTRACE customer testimonial is the fact that the tool itself is so intuitive, and it allows them to really prioritize what makes absolutely most sense. And it doesn't matter if DARKTRACE is your flagship product in your security stack, or if you have multiple firewalls and SIEMs and antiviruses, but DARKTRACE still finds this unique value add because it's able to get into those things that would not be able to be caught by these other solutions that do what they can and do a really good job at at their role in the security stack, which is usually sitting on the perimeter or identifying known bads. We can catch those unknown unknowns and give you that full network visibility that just was not possible before, because we observe all the network traffic. We see everything that happens, no matter where it's deployed, and also without the use of agents on every single endpoint across the network. So while I pull us back over to the investigate mode, get us right into the same zone, you can see how you can immediately pull back up. One other thing I wanted to show within here is when it comes to on a high level talking about security, of course, this is getting a little bit into the weeds of how you would actually use if you are a security engineer, if you are an IT manager, IT director, and you want to use this tool on a day-to-day basis. But security just goes beyond the people who use these tools on a day-to-day basis. It really is a business bottom line at this point, and you do have to learn how to communicate this with your board, with your CFO, with whoever signs off on it. So that's actually why we also have made some of our customers' lives easier with our reporting functionalities. Sometimes, especially when it comes to compliance, ongoing digital transformations and migrations, you're going to want some high-level overviews of what's happening across the network and just be able to communicate on a high level. Here's where we need to focus our time. Here's where the vulnerabilities lie. Here's where the business risk is. So we have this ability to pull up what we call the executive threat report. It's something you can automatically generate within the UI at any given point. You can choose the time frame associated with it. If you want to go back a month, you can. For the sake of time and how long it'll take to download, I'll just stick to the 7 days so you can see what it looks like. And the idea here is it's a summary report just to show you what's happening across the network. Let me zoom in because it's a little bit small. It's hard to read here. But it just gives you an overall view of what are the different phases of attacks that are happening across the network. Is there a lot more lateral movement than there was in the week prior, or a lot more egress, a lot more attempts at exploits and spoofing of different admin credentials, for example. You can also see which devices have the highest score of unusual behavior. So in this case, you're able to see, which particular devices might be just the points of vulnerability. Where, and if they have admin rights, you're going to want to really look into how these users and devices behaved, given the fact that they're breaching these high priority, models. Maybe they're doing more external data transfer than you would care to like, and this is a way that you can identify that. And of course, compliance is always huge. That's probably the #1 issue with most of my customers, is just making sure that they remain compliant, both for internal policies and for the ongoing regulations, especially if they're in highly regulated industries. So this is a way that you can immediately see what are the different compliance issues that they find. So in this case, we're seeing a good amount of WhatsApp Messenger voice and Dropbox. I mean, WhatsApp Messenger voice, it's hard to imagine a way that a ruled signature can identify this kind of very specific behavior on a network, but then it gives you this ability to know what's going on and have this overall understanding of what happens across your network in a way that you just could not before, and in one pane of glass that you can log into and understand on a very high level, what does my network look like, what is going on, where are the different pain points I need to focus on, and then dive right into it as need be, or just keep fleshing out. Another thing I wanted to sort of highlight about DARKTRACE as well is when it comes to its deployment, be it on-premise or in the cloud, it's pretty much a one-time deployment situation, and that's it. Once we start actually observing all the network traffic and passively ingesting so that we can build out this understanding of what normal looks like for the network, it's continuously self-learns. You don't have to constantly reconfigure it with new rules and updates. We have an ability that you can always customize the models that are the supervised models that sit on top of the unsupervised machine learning within here, but at the outset, it really is just as plug and play as possible. You let it deploy, you let it observe everything that's happening across your network, and that's it. Once it starts learning, the more information it gets, the smarter it gets, and the more comprehensive of an understanding of what normal is. So you're going to be able to see that certain things might flag earlier on, but then a month or two down the line, you'll see that it automatically continues to adjust and give different scores based off of what has happened across the board. So that really covers most everything that I wanted to show you here. I think I've got a few more minutes if you want to take some, if I want to answer some questions, happy to field some of them. In the meantime, I'm just basically waiting to get run off the stage. But in the meantime, also, yes, happy to answer some questions. And if you want to, of course, I'll reference once again, our booth is right over there. My colleague Joshua is standing up there in a little navy suit, speaking to a couple of people. So we've got some more information sheets that you can take on with you. And we're happy to field some more questions. Yeah. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and to answer both of your questions, is it signature-based? No, the core of the technology is that it's not signature-based. Of course, we do, will identify the WannaCries and the golden eyes, the known signatures of the world. We will have models programmed for those, but the base of the technology is that it's not signature-based, and we can catch those behaviors that don't have a rule or signature associated with it. And is it real time? Absolutely. If this were real, you'd be able to see if some new behavior came in. There'd be a little alert that kind of comes up and it'll repopulate within the UI. So the moment that it shows up on the network, you get an alert for it. It's about as real time as you possibly can be. Yes, IoT devices, that's a good question. That's a really common use case for a lot of our customers, because what you see here, it's a little bit hard to read. I'm going to maybe zoom in so you can see a little bit more of what that looks like. But all these different stats for the network include number of devices, and that includes all IoT devices as well. So anything that transmits network data and has a traceable IP address is going to be observed by DARKTRACE. So I've heard stories, and if you Google DARKTRACE, there's certainly a very famous one about a fish tank that was compromised in a casino, a very rare IoT device that the IT guys did not realize was on the network, but became the window into the network for hackers to try to access the high roller database. So absolutely, IoT devices is a very common use case for us. Yes, so it depends on how we deploy. If we're in an on-premise environment, then we will configure a span session off of a core switch, just core choke points where we see network traffic. All the data that we're analyzing is just raw network traffic. That is what we're looking at. That's where all of our understanding comes from. Similar kind of thing, we have lightweight sensors that we deploy into cloud environments as well, so that we can see both the overall VM traffic and the intra-VPC traffic as well. We don't look at logs, but we certainly can push all this information out to your SIEMs so that you can have those in log form as well. But that's not really our specialty. We look at the network traffic, but we can also feed it into your SIEM, into your firewall, so that they have that information as well. All right, that's all the time I have. Feel free to stop by and ask me some more questions.